It's time for a feel-good episode of Coach's Corner here on the Athens Rock Lobster Network. Voice of the Rock Lobsters, Matteen Rad here with head coach Steve Martinson. Coach Marty, the team is coming off 2 wins this past weekend, a shootout win against the Baton Rouge Zydeco and a 7-4 victory against the top team in the Continental Division, the Carolina Thunderbirds. These are 2 teams that have spent time atop our division this season. They're both playoff teams as of right now. It felt like a statement weekend for the club. What are your thoughts on the 2 wins?
Well, I thought the first night we really dominated them in Baton Rouge against them, and then I thought they were lucky to stay in the game. We had a couple of breakdowns, which every team has their breakdowns, but I didn't like a couple of the goals, and um, but we weren't scoring. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I didn't think going into Sunday we haven't been scoring at the rate that I would expect. So I was disappointed to have to go into overtime with Baton Rouge, but obviously getting the fans like the shootout. I don't because of the point system. But anyway, I was disappointed in that game. And then, obviously we had a little breakout on Sunday and scoring the goals. But again, we gave up odd man rushes to their best players, and you can't play like that. It's just so there was a lot of positives, but some negatives on Sunday too.
The Zydeco game, it felt like a game we had seen before in Aikens Ford Arena, like a closely contested boxing match almost. 2 heavyweights going blow for blow. The team goes and gets 3 leads, and it's not enough. It goes to a shootout, as we've mentioned. The team ultimately pulls out the win, and now the team has a league-leading 8 overtime wins, as many as it has in regulation this season. The team has shown their resilience to get these wins, but as you mentioned, ultimately with the league's rules, it's 8 dropped points as well, from a matter of a different perspective. Can you give us your full scope of thought on overtimes, how much the team has had to get it done in extra hockey this season, and also your thoughts on how overtime works in the Fed?
Well, I mean, overtime really, it's the smarter players usually win in overtime because it's a game of mistakes where if when you have 5-on-5, and most goals have multiple mistakes before it ends up in your net. I mean, every once in a while they just make a really good play, everything goes right, they have a great shot, and they end up with a goal. But typically there's a breakdown, then there's another one, and oftentimes there's 3. But in overtime, you only need one mistake to give a scoring chance because there's not other players to make up for the mistakes. That's the difference in the zone. You have 5 players defending, and 5 can collapse against 3 and leave the points open. So, but you don't have that in overtime. So that's the biggest thing. Dumb players make dumb plays in overtime and cause odd man rushes, and we've got enough skill that if we get scoring chances in overtime and odd man rushes, we're gonna score goals. And then we got some good players in shootouts and skilled guys, and certainly that helps.
That transitions us nicely to the next question. It's the longest shootout I believe we've had so far this season. It only went 5 shots. But I think it's the first time that we've gotten to see the rule in effect where you can send out the same shooter as many times as you like after the 3rd shot. I was curious, what goes into your decision making there? Do you just have an idea of who your 3 best shooters are? Or are you actively asking guys on the bench, hey, who's feeling comfortable to take shots right now?
Well, you have some guys that are better when it's a goalie that you're shooting on, and you have some guys that are better than it's deking. So if it's a shooting, if it's a if it's a guy that's back in his net, and we're going to shoot the puck on him, or maybe a smaller guy, then you're using maybe more of a shooter than a deker. Their goalie, I thought, was really big, and didn't have great movement side to side. So you're kind of using your dekers. I mean, that's really, I don't want to act like it's brain science, but um, I didn't think that they should have been in overtime with. I mean, I think we outshot them almost 2-1. We would dominate and they'd come down and get a scoring chance. So I wasn't really, happy with how we were playing and why we were in that position. But more of it was because we were shooting pucks into the goalie. We just kept shooting into, he's a big guy, and that's one of the things that changed a little bit on our power play to try to get a little bit more. We call it east west, and north south is up and down, east west is cross, and it's harder for goalies when you get that cross ice passing, and you get some what you call maybe prettier goals, but you don't get the screens and the rebound as much. So, um, I That's the strategy anyway in overtime is you don't want to you want to capitalize on the other team's mistakes and you want puck possession. You want to get guys, the longer you have the puck, the more people, and you really see this 5-on-5. The longer you have the puck in the offensive zone, the more people start looking at the guy with the puck and stop paying attention to the guy they're supposed to be covering. We do it. Everybody does it. It's something that you're always battling. But yeah, in overtime, you just don't have the extra help to make up for the mistakes.
I feel like that's a common thread that we'll take into the next game, which had a different outlook. You go up against the Thunderbirds and score 7 goals against the top defense in the league and the best goaltender this league has had in the last 2 years. Was there any secret sauce to making Cavalieri and their defense uncomfortable, or is just what the team looks like when it's firing on all cylinders?
Well, I think we had, you get Malik back, so you get a little bit more, in skill and some speed and some grit in the lineup. But um, I think part of it is we were starting to take advantage of their D, and that's one of the things that I'm trying always to talk about is making sure that we get possession in the offensive zone. I don't like to just fire it in, but I don't like turning the puck over on the rush. If you don't have a good play in the rush, you got to get it in. And where the other teams, I thought on their lineup, the defense is the weaker part of their team, and so you want to play where you can use the defenseman, and I think we took advantage of that. But like I said, flip side of that, we gave their best players like 4 or 5 odd man rushes, and that was inexcusable. And you ended up seeing different players playing against them by the third period because I got to have guys out against that top line. The one guy had 20 goals in the ECHL, and then Ford had he had 40 some goals last year, and we're giving those guys 2-on-1. Of course, they scored on a couple of the odd man rushes, but they just missed on a couple of other ones. But we got to be smarter than that.
The thing that I think stood out to me and stood out to a bunch of other people, you kind of just touched on it. You go out and score 3 power play goals against by far the best penalty kill team in the league. You told me last week that you wanted to see more deception out of your power play units. You talked in the last question about moving east to west a little bit more. Was that the kind of trickery that you were looking for out of your team on Sunday afternoon?
Well, on a power play, you've heard me say this: the number one factor in a good power play is nobody cares who scores. And what I mean by that is an unselfish power play, and you're really taking advantage of either how they're killing or the mistakes that they make. And when you make a mistake when you're shorthanded, you need less mistakes for a scoring chance than you do 5-on-5. And I just thought we moved the puck better on the goals, and then we had traffic in front. You look at it, we had good puck, great puck movement into the slot for quick shots. One was Gallant's goal, one was Malik's goal, but that was off a rebound from Glukarov. So I just like the way we were moving the puck. And then the other big difference is Carter took that one timer, and it was a laser in the top, but it was right in the top corner. And, I thought that we've been shooting the puck, but, a lot of the games you look where we're getting 50 shots, man, we're hitting the goalie in the chest 30 times. So I actually was on a couple of guys this morning about, working on their shot. And you can't just work on your shot during practice time. If you want to score more goals, you got to go out there a little bit early when the ice is clean and work on shooting, work on get a buddy on the team and work on, some one-timers and some quick plays. So we haven't had a lot of that because of our, having to practice at the practice rink. You only get X amount of time. But now that we're in our rink, guys can go out early and I'll give an example. Murray was out there 30 minutes before practice, and I watched him. He didn't know I was watching him, but I was just curious to see what he was doing. And he's out there working on shots from the point, and the point of all that is he wants to score more goals. And there's the BSers say they want to score more goals, but they don't do anything about it. And if you want to score more goals, and maybe sometimes you got to put in a little bit more work. So it's good to see him out there working on a shot.
Someone who did score in that game, and it was a cherry on top, was Malik Johnson. He scored the 7th in that 7-4 win back from his loan to the ECHL team, the South Carolina Stingrays. I was curious because before, Malik and Milan had been on a line together, I believe, for every game before Malik went on loan. He ends up on a line in that game, Malik does, with Virgili and Gallant. Was it a hard decision to put those two on different lines, or has the play of Glukaryov with Millsy as Malik has been gone made it easier for you to decide?
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. So the thing that with Glukarov is he's strong in the corner, he's strong on the puck, and he can move, and he makes good plays, he scores goals, but he also smart enough that he gets Milan the puck, and he gets Milan the puck, and then he's good at you know the style that he plays goes really well with the style that Milan plays. Now, I was looking at really getting a line that I could play at home against the other team's top line. And when I started the idea of not putting Malik and Garrett back together, it's because I was looking at having I thought Orca was going to be in by last weekend, but he's in this weekend. And Orca is another guy that, he can skate. I think he might have been our second leading scorer when he got hurt. I know he was second in goals. So he's a first line guy, but he also finishes every check. And, I was looking at a line that I could play against the other team's first line at home that might be a little bit harder to play against, but also be able to counterpunch and score goals. I don't like to say I want to have a checking line, but there's just some guys are better defensively and some guys are harder to play against. So that's what I was looking at, is getting a line, I'm trying something right now, with Orca and Malik and Picard on the line, and that's a fast line. So I have different little thoughts, but and then the other thing is with the way that Lodge was playing. Lodge is a really smart player, but people have to understand, like, he only skated one day before he played. I mean, he hadn't practiced. He skated one day at practice, and then we threw him in the lineup. So he's got a little bit of a sore back. I don't think he's going to be able to go this weekend, but um, that line had been, even though they might not have scored as many goals as I thought they could have, they were just missing on a lot of chances. And so really what we're looking at now is three lines that can score on any shift. And that's what I think that we have going into the weekend is, well, I know it. If I keep the lines the way they are right now, but with me, you never know if that's really happening or not. But if I keep the lines the way we have right now, I feel that we have a lot better chance of scoring on every shift.
We talked a lot about the return of Malik. You mentioned Orca as well. A lot of people were waiting for his return last weekend. You talked about seeing him this weekend. My guess on the broadcast, and it was really just a guess, was that you potentially felt less inclined to risk Orca because you got Malik back for that Sunday game. Am I on the money there, or was there some sort of roadblock for
That was
Orca,
part of it.
albeit?
That's part of it. But if I felt like Orca was ready to go, I mean, he was basically at 9.5 weeks in surgery, and they were talking about 10 weeks. But usually athletes heal up a little faster, and a lot of times when I hear that 10 weeks, I'm thinking of a normal person. But he wasn't quite comfortable as he is now, and then the other thing is, he had been gone last weekend to see his dad or his brother play, and so and we didn't have as many practices. So I wanted to really then, when we got Malik back, I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. I can get Orca, into three good practices, and then play him. And so a lot of factors went into that, but Orca's ready to go now.
People have been curious about Riley Robertson. I think he kind of really quickly became a fan favorite as we had opened up home games at Aikens Ford. We knew from last week that you had told us he had been nursing a knock, but he's also been listed on the online roster now as a player assistant coach. And I've been seeing him return to the bench in between periods with the whiteboard. First, is there any update on Riley? And secondly, what has he been adding from a coaching perspective?
Well, so it's a technicality with the league. You have to, if you have a player on the bench, he's got to be listed as a player assistant coach. So he's not really a player assistant coach. I like to use whatever defenseman isn't playing on the bench. And I've used, in the past, I used Orca because Orca was going out of his mind, being out so long. He was just like, hey, can I come? Can I go on the bench? And so I was like, yeah, but and typically I'd like to use the defenseman because it's a little bit easier for the defenseman to pay attention to know with who and who's playing in certain situations. But that's just a technicality. And he went on the IR because I could put him all the way back to the day that he got hurt. So, or the last game that he played. So he's clear to come off the IR. He's coming off on Friday and playing. So yeah, that was just a funny thing with the league that makes you have to do that if you have the player on the bench, which it's just what it is.
It sounds like you're having a fully healthy roster nearly right now. Does that make decisions difficult for you going into this weekend, this crucial road trip right now?
Yeah, anytime I have to sit players out, I don't like sitting players out. You have to have extra players. You know what I mean? You have to have it if you want to be a team and you want to have depth. You got to have, you got to have at least two extra guys. And so, unfortunately, like I would like to be able to have, one more player in the lineup, and that way, if you're paying players to be here, you can play more guys. But the rules are that's what it is, and so. I mean, I was in the American League when, years ago, and we went down to 10 forwards and 60. So they do that to kind of keep costs down. But yeah, it's always tough sitting out guys. I mean, what you try to do is if a guy doesn't have maybe his A game, it gives him a little bit of incentive. But, right now we're really deep and we're going to have guys sitting out that would be playing, but that's just, it's really, some of the young guys are going to miss a game this weekend. And it's part of, it's the positive thing of being healthy. Is the negative thing, you got to sit guys out.
Sunday also marked the pro debut, and I've been practicing my French Canadian pronunciations. Dominique Rodriguez. It's got to be hard for him to be coming straight off the collegiate game with Castleton, and then he's starting against arguably the best team in the league. It really seemed like he grew into the game as it went on. What did you make of him and his performance?
Yeah, I thought it was a tough start for him because, I think they only had 4 shots on goal in the first period. They had 2 goals, but one of them was forward, right down in the slot. We had the turnover, right at our blue line. And then the other one was, they had 2 deflection goals. And the first one was going wide and it was deflected in. The last goal, same thing, was a deflection and the problem with he's not a real big goalie. So if you're a smaller goalie and you're back of the net and you get a deflection, you just take up less space. So, and then the other goal they scored on him was, again, was their top players on a 2-on-1. That was a one-timer that nobody, Patrick Walken stopped that one.
Last question for me, Coach. We travel back to Monroe, back where it all started, to take on the Moccasins once again. The outlook for Monroe is a lot different than it used to be. With you just getting through 8 games at home, are you nervous at all on how the team will adjust to going back on the road?
No, not really. I mean, we've been the best road team in the league that I know of. I mean, I know Binghamton's got a really good record, but everybody knows that a lot of teams up in the north aren't very good, and so there's more depth down here, and so we've got the toughest team in the league and the grittiest team. So I mean, playing on the road is isn't really a factor, I don't think, for our guys or for the style that we play. Since especially when you get a big guy like get Riley back out there, and we've added Greco, and so I playing on the road is no issue for our guys.
2 road trips back to back, first to Monroe and then to Columbus. I'll see you there, Coach.
Okay. See you later.